Hi, you're with Amanda Rose, and today I'm with Clare Mann, psychologist, owner of Communicate 31, and we're just about to have a book launch for her next book called Communicate. So welcome, Clare. Thank you for coming to The Businesswoman today. Being a businesswoman yourself, first thing I want to ask is, why do you specialise and why are you so passionate about communication?
Well, I really believe that the quality of our communication equals the quality of our result. If you
Good point.
Absolutely. So in everything from the bedroom to the boardroom,
we'll talk about that.
the quality of how we speak to each other is instrumental in the results we get in our lives and in our businesses.
Okay, so what do you find is the number one, you could say not error, or maybe something that people do that you think, goodness, everyone seems to do this, it's the worst thing they could possibly do when they communicate with someone?
Sure. It's probably what they don't do as much as what they do.
Okay.
The inability to say no and mean it and stick to your guns is almost impossible for some people.
Yeah.
So often people give in, they then resent the other person or they resent themselves. So when people go into a communication situation, to actually not have the belief in themselves that they have a right to say no to people often gets in the way of them communicating. And they often go around the houses hoping to convince the other person to suddenly say, of course you don't have to do what I've asked you to do.
Right, so are the men or women worse at saying no? I had to ask.
Well, it's interesting because I've tried to veer away from gender differences for so long, but there clearly are some differences, we know this.
Yes.
But I've seen women who are terribly assertive and others that can't say no at all, and the same with men as well. I think there are many more variables coming into play, not just gender.
Speaking of assertiveness, do you think that people can be too assertive? And no, I'm not saying me, everyone that's listening right now or watching, but you know, do you think that some people can be too aggressive maybe? You know, I know a lot of people that are quite submissive and, like you said, they don't feel confident saying no, but do you think some people can be a little bit too out there?
Well, I think it's important to define the difference between aggression and assertion.
Yes.
If someone's assertive, they are making a stand about themselves. They're saying yes to themselves and no to someone else, but they're also not undermining the value or the contribution of the other person. When we have aggression there, of course, somehow you have denigrated the other person and disempowered them in some way. I don't think there's any room for aggression. When you believe in what you want to say and you're prepared to stick to something without manipulating the other person or abusing them, then you don't need to use aggression.
I love it. That's exactly what I love to hear. So why, I mean, obviously you've written multiple books, but why did you feel the need to write a book, Communicate? Obviously there's a need out there for people to learn common sense and basic strategies as well as probably more complex ones, but why did it come about?
Well, the short answer to that is because people were asking me to write it.
Yes.
I'm a psychologist of over 20 years. I've worked with hundreds of people on a one-to-one basis, in fact thousands in organisations. And they often wanted to go away and have other strategies or techniques or reading material that would enable them to build on the growth we'd started. And whilst there are wonderful books out on there in communication, there's wonderful things on personal development, visioning, strategies, positive thinking, I felt there was something missing. And I felt it was that gap that I wanted to fill. And that gap, I believe, has something to do with the unconscious influences that actually dictate our behaviour and our outcomes far more than the actual conscious ones.
And you don't know what you don't know.
Absolutely. Yes. Well, you know what I was reflected back in, look at what's happening in your life. If you don't like what's happening,
change it.
Well, that's the thing. We try and change it. We can't do it at a conscious level. It's at an unconscious level.
I like that. Now, it's a business show, so we won't get too much about the bedroom, but I do want to ask a question. With communication, you say from the bedroom to the boardroom, is there a connection there? Is there a similarity? Or is there something that you can do that's effective in both areas that people need to know about?
Well, absolutely. It's obviously a little bit of pun on the title, yes. And it's when people get those areas mixed up, we get into all sorts of problems, of course.
That's where the men go wrong, not the women.
Well, that's what the men say, but for every man there's a woman out there as well, of course.
That's true.
But in answer to that question, I teach people to be calm communicators. Now, what I mean by that is someone who is a calm communicator is someone that has a very high level of self-reflection. They take absolute responsibility for everything that happens in their life. They've done a lot of the inner work so that the outer results match that, and then they match it with exquisite communication skills. When they do that, it transcends time and situation so that they can move from the bedroom to the boardroom and still be able to be heard and to listen to others' needs.
Do you think society has got a lot to answer for with people's lack lack of, or the inability to communicate effectively, you know, that you don't feel comfortable, you know, being assertive or saying no or standing up for what you believe because of things such as social media, where there are a lot more people that can quickly say, don't agree with you, don't like you, and they think, goodness me, I didn't expect that. So could we somewhat, not blame society, but say that thanks to the advancements of society, it kind of backfired on us?
Right. I think there's a lack of tolerance often, of certainly people who are less patient or more impatient these days. They want answers very quickly. In fact, I was reading some research the other day, and it was saying that because we're communicating on social media or by email, the trustworthiness of another person is often dictated by the speed of response. So
Isn't that interesting?
It is interesting. If you think about it, when you've gone to order something, if someone just comes back and say, I got your order, you'll wait for a week. But if you don't hear, you become impatient. I think the time is about 7 hours before people are on to the next person.
Isn't that amazing?
So this lack of tolerance is one thing. And I think there's a sort of, you know, no longer can we say something is in the post. But you know, we all have the same amount of time. And for this book, I've interviewed 35 chief executives or senior individuals. When they decided to give me their time, not one of them said, I'm too busy, or I've got a lot to do, we've only got a short amount of time. Once they've decided to give me their time, they were all there for me.
That's right.
Which is a lesson for us all, of course, in the moment.
Do you find that there are a particular type of, and obviously you work with businesses and individuals, that, you know, maybe the larger businesses and leaders in that, the larger business are less effective or more effective communicators than, say, your small business owner or your individual?
Well, I think it varies enormously. If someone is not communicating well, it will be reflected in their results. And we hope there are measures in place, sometimes lack of sales, perhaps for the small business, or in an organisation, some systems that would pull people into line in some sort of way. But it really varies enormously.
What would we call it a result? You know, obviously with a salesperson, it would be getting sales, but for someone who's not in business and they're just communicating, do the results change per person? Is it, do you have to articulate what you would see as a result first, or is it the same across, you know?
I think when I'm talking about results, I'm talking about outcomes from your life. So it could be the quality of your relationships. Yes. It could be satisfaction that you feel you belong somewhere. It could be how much money you bring into your business. But you know, my definition of success, which I stole from the late Earl Nightingale, he said, success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. Now that to me is success. It's progressive. It's therefore you're.
That's a very good point. It's progressive. You don't actually reach. You constantly evolve, and that's exciting too, because that means that you're not getting the deflation after reaching a goal. It's constantly changing. You're constantly succeeding or reaching them.
But nice. It's a worthy ideal. It's something you believe in. And I see so many people today, often they've gone into a certain career or business and they say, well, this is what I trained for. But you know, there is another precious currency as well as communication. It's called our life, and it's a limited one. And these days we have so many opportunities to change things and do what we really love.
Now, speaking of doing what we really love, we have to wind down now because you've got to go down and launch your book.
I have.
Your book, Communicate, which we will be talking about. So we'll be featuring Communicate on our website and also having another interview with Clare on our radio program. So stay tuned, and thank you, Clare, for being on The Businesswoman.
Thank you very much. I'll see you along with about 270 other people.
Beautiful.
Lovely.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.